Welcome back. Monday, April. Is it April? 22nd, 2024. Is it April, Morley? Is it?
I think so, yes.
I think so. Hey.
Last time I checked, we got a full moon tomorrow night.
We do. And guess what?
The pink full moon. Yeah, what?
I'll tell you afterwards. I'll tell you when we're done. I'm not ready to release it yet, but I have great news for you.
There we go.
On the state of the world and where we're going.
Sweet.
I won't release it tomorrow. I'll give you a sneak peek after this is over.
Okay. That's great.
How's Morley?
Morley's fine. Morley's on fire with the research. It's amazing what I keep finding.
They were upset at me last week, by the way, for the record, because of you.
Because
I got messages. Where's Morley? I'm like, hey, it wasn't me. I get a text that he's traveling and it's going to be, they had something happen or something, probably, I don't know, whatever was going on. And he,
you know what? I was driving back from Florida, as you know, and I could have tried to have a conversation while I was driving, but I thought that would be just rude for everyone's sake. So I just thank you for allowing me to.
It wasn't me. I was fine with it. They were like, "Where's Morley? Where's Morley?" I'm like, "Back off."
That's a nice problem to have, right? You know,
I had to go on and post. Morley is traveling. This is not Morley, not me. Oh God! But you know what? It's a good sign. You know why? Morley, you don't need the doctors. Just educate the people.
No, that's exactly right.
They want to know where you were.
I'm very clear on that. I'm very, very clear. I know this is a people's revolution.
It is. And I think that's, I have my Dr. Tina. She works with, I call it objective astrology. Now, I don't call it astrology because astrology is like, the world's going to be fine. You're told she's like, no, you have choices to make. And, you can either be on these choices or you can let it affect you, but don't let it affect you. You need to make good choices and do the thing. And she said, this is us. This is the people coming back. This is the people controlling. And, it's funny, every time you and I talk, and you're like, the doctors don't get it, doctors get it. Even us in practice, we're noticing, like, we have to practice differently. Not because we're doing it the same way as medical doctors, but the medical thing is going to collapse over time. I don't know that you don't want them to wake up, but the education in their hands, they can't be educated because they don't want to learn. That's the problem. Versus people want to learn.
They do. Well, I think the people, they're not indoctrinated. They've not been formally. The lifestyle of becoming a doctor, regardless of what your degree is horrific. The sacrifice that's made. And once you make that sacrifice to get that degree, to get those credentials, to get the licensure, you're not going to challenge that. You survived a very significant period of stress. And the public hasn't experienced that.
Even in our world, people ask us to what would happen if they're like, oh, you're licensed. I go, I know the chiropractic license is a cabal license still. I go, but
yeah,
and if someday they came for it, they can have it in a way. I go, but until then, we worked our ass off for that thing. I don't think people know the stress of 4 years. No. Both my wife, Dr. Liz went, it was tortuous stress, nights of very little sleep and, going in to take a test and some of it memorization. But yeah, you're right. It's if I had to, I'd let it go, but I'm not going to rush to let it go.
I remember a friend of mine who was a medical student at the time needed to sign a document. And we found the point in time to get together and connected. And as she went to sign the document, her hand was shaking. I said, I think she was like a senior in medical school at that time. I said, how many cups of coffee have you had today? How many do you think she'd had? This was.
You can answer that, and then I'll tell you how much I used to drink.
6 cups of coffee.
Ready? You want to know what I used
Yeah,
to drink?
I can't wait.
I don't anymore. I'm down to, and I go off and on it. Like I blend things to like try to take the caffeine thing off
Right.
me. Morley, for decade plus, I was on 4 quad Americanos a day. That's, for anybody out there who doesn't know the math on that. That is
Oh
16.
God,
That is 16 shots of espresso a day. So when people are like, "You got to work on your adrenals," I'm like, "No shit."
you go, boy. Wow, that's the most caffeine I've ever heard in my life.
There you
I
go.
was
See,
When I first started going to Starbucks, there was a high school kid who would come in every morning and get a quad, and I was like, dude, you don't know what you're doing, but 4? That's putting it right
and
out there.
you know what? I still, other than a little bit of gray, I look younger than I go. Luckily, I'm dumping minerals in my body now. But yeah, more. I mean, it's, well, I grew up though. I started coffee when I was about 8 years old. So my grandmother started me on. I don't know
Okay,
why.
yeah, and you acquire a taste for it. You know,
So yeah,
that's amazing. Well, that did a number on your
that's
adrenals
amazing.
and your spleen. I wonder what your spleen did with all that coffee, all that caffeine. Like, wow.
Luckily, I've been very holistic over the last, since like 2005.
Right, right.
Because if I wasn't, oh my God.
No, and that's a good stretch of time. So that's a decade of,
Yeah, so
no,
we've done
two and a
some
half
reversal.
decades.
My wife has kicked my butt a little bit, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's awesome.
How's Morley been with the research?
Well, let's see. What have I learned? I think this is fascinating. I talk about the spleen. I find the spleen fascinating. I found an article today that it's just, I can't even begin to describe it. Just know that the spleen is very mysterious and important, and there's a reason for it. But to make it simple, everyone knows about insulin resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've heard of it. You know? I think to me, the one of the most stunning passages I've ever heard, and again, everyone has Audible. I have Dr. Liz. When we're driving, she reads to me, and
I love
it's
that.
amazing. It's just phenomenal. And because of her science background, she has perfect diction. She knows what she's saying. I can ask
Nice.
questions. What does this mean? It's just
Oh,
it's
that's
like
you have better than Audible.
I
You have
have,
a
I have
perfect
I
science brain wife.
I know I have Audible plus Wikipedia. It's amazing, right? So Robert Lustig, Fat Chance, wonderful book
Yep.
written, I believe, in 2012. But the passage that I almost had an accident over was, it takes twice as much insulin today, 2012, to clear the same amount of glucose as it did in the 1980s. So 30 years before. It's like, what? Twice as much insulin. So that's called insulin resistance.
Yep.
It turns out, and again, there's something that
You're already blowing my mind on diabetes, but continue on, because I just thought about that statement. I'm like, oh wait, hold on, but keep going.
we'll come back. So L. Ron Hubbard, founder of Scientology,
Yep.
once said, never go past a word
Yep.
or a phrase that you do not
The
understand,
misunderstood word.
the misunderstood word. And what have I done methodically for 15 years? Oh, I don't need to know about that. And then always regret it later. But the phrase that I've read but never understood was interleukin 10. I know
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
interleukin beta, interleukin 6. I can interleukin 2, interleukin 10. That can't be important. So I'll just pitch it.
You didn't understand the word. There's a blank space after that.
Yeah,
Our brain shuts off after that.
it does.
It does. It
Exactly.
literally does.
No, that's right. And so, like, the universe says, okay, doofus, it's time for you to interleukin 10. Turns out, interleukin 10 has many jobs, but
I'm looking it up while you talk about it.
one of the most important is to ensure insulin sensitivity in the liver and the muscles. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Who secretes interleukin 10 into the bloodstream? It's called the spleen. So when does it stop secreting interleukin 10? When it has too much iron. So there's a term called splenomegalia. That's a really big word. Splenomegalia means it's full of iron, right? And it can't think. If it can't think, then what people need to understand, visualize the Mercedes-Benz logo, the three-pointed star, and one of those points is iron recycling. Another one of those points is the immune system, and the third point is the lymphatic system. It's boy, the intersection of three really important parts of our anatomy and physiology. But if the iron recycling starts to wobble, iron starts to accumulate in the spleen, and then it starts to affect its ability to regulate the immune system. And in particular, interleukin 10 takes it on the chin. Now, what I'm coming to learn is that interleukin 10, it's like a Goldilocks syndrome, bell-shaped curve. Too much, too little is bad. We need it in the sweet spot, right? And so what's behind a lot of the sensitivities, the people, environmental sensitivities, is inappropriate expression of interleukin 10. And again, it's because the spleen is really struggling with its functions because of the iron dysregulation that takes place in our body. Absolutely amazing. Spleen.
You know, sometimes, just for the record, sometimes I do what you just said, which is all these old words that I learned in school that I didn't learn in school.
Yeah,
I go back and I readdress them because you're right. Like macrophages gets thrown around, interleukin 10. Like you get these things, and you're like, "The hell did it actually mean?" You go back, you start looking at it, like, "Oh, damn!" And then it makes you understand something more, and you're like, now the mind starts popping, right? You're like, "Oh." It opens up the physiology of the body and what's really going on.
Well, what's real important for people to realize is that diabetes is not a sugar problem. It's a fat metabolism problem. If the body can't metabolize fat, then it starts to focus on carbs. And you got to have copper to metabolize fat. And so if the fat metabolism starts to wobble, it's going to then affect the rest of the metabolism in the body. It's all connected. It's fascinating, but it buried in the research is the importance of copper behind
If it
all of these
can't
dynamics.
metabolize the fat,
Yeah.
it
So
make, you're
here's
just
something
making
you
me
need.
think. That's all. I think on camera.
So here's something to know about. Um, Davis and Czech, 1987, studied what happens when insulin presents to a fat cell. Because we have the insulin because we need to get the sugars inside the fat cell
Right.
to store it as triglycerides, right? That's really what's happening. And so what they discovered is there's a 2 to 3 fold increase in iron uptake in those fat cells that are presented with insulin. Like, what? Well, that's diabetes. It's you've got a lot of iron, you can't break down fat, and we are at the fat cell. We keep getting punctured with this insulin, and it keeps injecting more and more and more iron, and that's the basis of the work of Merla Hubler, who's an MD PhD at Vanderbilt, and her dissertation became an article in the American Journal of Physiology, which is a really highbrow publication, as you know. And her article won the award for the best article in, I think it was 2021.
Hmm.
It was just, she's like off the chart. And she's all about the macrophages that you're talking about losing their mojo because they can't break down the fat cell, they can't break down the fat, and then everything starts to back up, and then we've got something called type 2 diabetes. It's amazing. But we're back to the same cast of characters. We're back to copper and iron. We're back to sugar and fat. We're back to really fundamental elements that are out of balance and can't work with each other.
And did you say we need double the insulin? Is that what you said?
Twice as much insulin in 2012 the wording in the book was in the present day, but 2012, to clear the same amount of glucose as we did 30 years previously. That's a stunning
That's
indication.
insane.
Well, what it really gets to, and I've got a whole presentation that gets to this, the mechanism to get glucose in the cell requires, I believe it requires proper functioning ceruloplasmin, that greases the skids. And insulin is a backup plan to a low copper body. That's really what's going on. And I'm not making this stuff up. This is
Yeah.
the research of like Leslie Clave and some other really sophisticated researchers who are like, I, back in the 40s, they were very clear that copper was important for glucose metabolism, to getting the glucose into the cell. But now it's like, ooh, don't go there. And here's the killer statistic. There are genetic defects, we know, and one of the most severe is called the Menkes disease. It's a specific gene called ATP7A,
Okay.
and it's a copper loading enzyme that we have ATP7B loads up copper into ceruloplasmin, which we've talked about, the master antioxidant of the body. Well, ATP7A loads up copper in all the other enzymes, which there are dozens. So you got ceruloplasmin and then all the others. When people are born with a dysfunction in the ATP7A, they don't live beyond the age of 3 because they can't survive without copper. It's that important. And where it all kind of crystallized for me was in 1987. Dr. Clave wrote an article about two guys who were having glucose intolerance issues. And he made an observation based on a textbook in pediatric medicine. So the article was 1987, the textbook was 1982. And he said, and I quote, children with Menkes disease are the most glucose intolerant people on the planet. That's a very bold thing to say. And what that does is it directly ties copper to glucose metabolism. Menkes is all about dysfunctional copper metabolism. The body doesn't function. It can't load up the copper that's needed. And these are the most glucose intolerant. And so glucose intolerance is the flip side of insulin resistance. And what we've been trained to believe is that chromatin, I'm getting it wrong, not cobalt. What's the
Chromium?
glucose? Chromium, thank you. Chromium is the glucose tolerance factor. It's not chromium.
Everyone goes to chromium when they hear about pancreas and
No,
things like that and sugar metabolism.
it's copper. Absolutely convinced it's copper. All of the enzymes in the pancreas, they're copper dependent. And so it's
Everyone says chromium.
I know.
It's like the standard. That's like the standard in all natural healthcare is chromium.
Absolute standard. Just like silver is the standard, right?
I'm not going to bring up the person that says this because we
No,
love them,
no.
but
Yeah. No, just the conditioning, the programming,
right.
the propaganda is very deep. And we have to be open to the possibility that there's more to the story. And I believe it was 1945. Up prior to 1945, B5 had copper in it. And then in 1945, a little firm named Merck, you've heard of it,
Merc.
they created calcium D-pentothenate. And they changed the binding mineral to calcium and not copper. That's a really big deal. And now you can go to any manufacturer of B vitamins and you will see calcium D-pentothenate with a little R and a circle around it. It's the only form you can buy. Again, people don't realize the manipulation of our environment that's taken place over the last century.
100%.
We're boiling the frog 1 year at a time.
It's so true. And the doctors were the best way to do it because that education is a strong form of programming. And once the programming is put in, once the programming happens, it is, I would say, vastly very difficult to change that. Therefore, it's not the doctors who are going to figure this out. It's the people, because you know why? The people are tired of feeling like crap.
Right.
The doctors aren't even aware they feel like crap.
No, that's true. And so what's the one characteristic that most doctors have in common? They're firstborns. The vast majority of doctors are firstborns of conventional.
It's true. That's true for both of us in this house.
Okay. Well, it's and so what's the job of the firstborn in the family? Protect the status quo. You're not wired. You're different. You're not the typical firstborn, but most firstborns will not challenge authority, and that's kind of the mechanism that keeps everything in check. Is that doctors won't question what they've been taught because they're going to protect it.
I didn't always challenge authority. It wasn't until about 2005. I had to wake up before I challenged authority. I didn't in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely.
My wife's the same. She didn't challenge authority in the beginning. Then she changed. She shifted.
Yeah.
I think actually chiropractic changed her. She went to a chiropractic seminar and it changed her whole life, like back in early 2000s or something like that. 1996, 8, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had a whole series of challenges, but it was probably a waking up. But it was probably 2009 is when I really like, what?
You were 2009?
Yeah.
Really?
It was building before then. I mean, it goes back to the 60s, but it came to a head in the 2009. Well, I remember July of 2008 pulling the plug on my TV, and I haven't had a TV since then. So I just I unplugged. That was a bold move, but it was really following that I really began to question what was going on.
Interesting. When did you leave the hospital world?
It was about 2009. Yeah.
Right.
No, it's not a coincidence. And to exist in that world, you have to believe in that world, right?
Or you're just kind of going into pain and misery every day, and you just can't do it after a while.
You can't do it. And so when I really connected with Dr. Liz, it was like I had just completely let go. And she introduced me to Weston A. Price. I thought she said Western A. Price the first time she said it. And I was like, what? And then she introduced me to Tesla. She introduced me to Rumi. I mean, it's just a list of things that I just didn't know. And it's like there was this massive download And then I don't know. It's been a fascinating ride for 15 years.
All over from there. 50. I feel it just feels like you've been in this from like the beginning. That's what's funny.
Well, one of my students, I made some comment. I said, it's getting easier to understand this. I must be tapping into a past life. And she said, that's not what's going on at all. I said, what do you mean? She said, you came here from the future. You're trying to help us. I said, oh, that's a cool idea. I like that. It's really kind of an interesting way to look at it.
So my wife and daughter and I yesterday, we finally like just stopped because we had the day off, which is shocking. And you know what we watched, Morley?
Back to the Future.
We watched Back to the Future for, I don't even know what time it is, but how many times. I watched that one. They watched Back to the Future too, and I started like doing some work. But we watched Back to the Future. Morley, go watch Back to the Future.
Oh, we just watched it a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it's just
every single time I watched it, more and more.
I'm Doc, trying to get the two wires together. We're close. We're close.
More and more. When you watch it, you're like, oh my God.
It's really wild, isn't it?
You want to hear something interesting about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I was going to the Reawaken America event, the last one I went to to Vegas and Miami. Vegas was the last one I like really, really went to. I was invested in it.
Yeah.
Do you know President Trump has a DeLorean?
No, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
He has a DeLorean that he puts in front of the golf course. And before I left,
it's called Looking Glass. Is that what it's called?
I was on the event planning list for the Reawaken tour. And they sent me this is a long spreadsheet. It's on a Word document kind of thing or whatever. And guess what the picture was on the Word document? The flux capacitor.
Of course.
And I said, what the hell? And I'll tell you more after we're done. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then yesterday, another word popped up, which was, you can either call it temporal pincer or temporal displacement.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. Which plays into this because you're watching almost like the early 1900s or late 1800s of healthcare come around to catch up with 2024 and reconnect. As in everyone's waking up to like, wait, something's wrong. Healthcare is messed up. What is happening? And minds are popping every day in healthcare, Morley. They really are.
Oh yeah. No, people are really, they're connecting the dots. No question about it.
Are you getting a tremendous shift of people behind? So you go on other podcasts. Are you getting other people from other shows like reaching out and going, wait a second, I didn't know anything about this. This is brand new. This makes sense.
Right. Well, I've been at this now for almost a decade. So the people who are coming to me have done a lot of work to understand where I'm coming from. It would be rare for someone who's in left field to suddenly say, let me talk to this guy who's got a completely contradictory way of thinking. I mean, I connected with a woman recently, actually she's in Jacksonville, and not quite down the street from you, but military doctor, and I think she's listened to just about every podcast I've ever done.
Whoa. Which
means her husband has had to listen to just about every podcast. and her mind is blown, but now she understands, and so now it's causing this shift in her. And I think people invest time to understand where I'm coming from before they're about to engage in an open dialogue like this.
Right.
They're going to want, they're not going to ask an open-ended question and not know where I'm going. Because I think it's that provocative in some respects. And so I was just doing a podcast just before you and I connected with a really talented wealth advisor from Canada, and he has this really cool podcast for high income people.
Yeah.
So we're going through the stops and the starts of the root cause protocol. He's like, well, I think we've pretty much lost everyone by now, which is great. He was playing, beautifully the way people would respond, because he said it's changed his life. It's transformed him in 3 months. He's like, he can't believe how much better he feels, and so he's trying to bring his community in, but he's just like,
So totally different industry, not in healthcare,
right,
but
totally.
brought you in because it that's fantastic.
And what triggered it was I made some reference on another podcast that he happened to hear. I said, your health is your greatest wealth. Well, his podcast is called Deep Wealth.
Yes.
And he just like, he clicked, he went, I got to find out what this guy's talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the money in the world doesn't mean anything if you're sick and dying. It really doesn't.
That's right. So it's been a real delight to get to know him, and now have a chance to dance on his community.
Nice. Did you know the Weston A. Price event was coming to Orlando this year?
I did, and I don't know the month. Is it October or November?
I don't know. My wife just told me the other day, so I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be there for that. I mean, I won't be speaking, but I think I might be.
You got booted off that stage.
Well, it never got booted off. It was, you got to be degreed. I don't
Really?
have. Oh yeah. Oh my God.
For
you gotta
what?
have. I'm a mutt.
She wants you degreed to be on the stage?
Degreed.
Yeah, degreed. She wants you degreed?
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. No, she's got very strict credentials about what your background is to get onto that stage, and I respect that. I'm not your average chimp.
Yeah.
I know. And it's like, it doesn't.
I don't want to be medical. Like, that's not.
Yeah.
I don't want.
Well, it isn't just medical. It's like, don't talk about nutrition if you don't have a degree in nutrition. I'm like, I eat so I can talk about nutrition.
We live in a different world today.
Yeah, and so she just has very strict standards, and we were just at a meeting in Las Vegas together, and we, had a lovely conversation. But it's like, I'm not in that realm but I definitely want to be there, because it's a great group of people, really switched on. I think they need to learn more about copper.
Considering that's one of the main minerals in the foods that they promote.
Yeah, but here's the kicker. I think we've talked about this before, but now I've got the article. 2017, French citizens. Who's been opposed to glyphosate more than the French? Nobody. They were vehemently opposed whenever it came out in '87, and it's been that way for almost 40 years. And in 2017, 30 years after glyphosate was introduced worldwide, but not in France, but in 2017, 99% of French citizens are peeing glyphosate in their urine.
Yep.
That's a serious development, folks. It means that glyphosate's everywhere. It knows no boundaries. It isn't just the commercial farmer down the street. And here's something I just learned day before yesterday. What state of the union has the highest use of glyphosate?
I would say Wisconsin.
Go south. Indiana.
Really?
Yep. I was surprised too. There's more glyphosate per acre in Indiana than any other part of the country.
I would not have guessed that.
No, and I was talking to
any reason that stands out?
Just a lot of corn grown in Indiana. I mean,
really,
a lot of corn. Yeah.
I don't know a lot about Indiana.
Yeah, the only time I've ever ridden in a combine was at midnight in Indiana, and the rain was coming, and the farmer had to get the corn out of the field, and poor guy was going at all hours of the night, and it was fascinating to experience that. But no, it's Indiana. I would have guessed it was like Nebraska, something like that, you know, or Iowa, King Corn, the famous
Yep.
documentary. That's one of my other favorite movies besides Back
That
to
was
the
a good
Future.
movie. Have you seen the Julia Child's video?
Video? What do you
Yeah.
mean?
I wanted to show you this. This is not just about copper, but it's along the same lines of what we're talking about. Because Julia Child is was a big advocate of butter, correct?
Oh my God, absolutely! And all of the references to butter have been expunged. Random House edited both volumes of her cookbooks.
I'm gonna show you this real quick.
We're supposed to use seed oils now.
I'm glad you brought that up. Ready? Here's an
Yep.
old school video. I can't find the one just by her, but this is the one with Sean Baker. But listen to what she says.
And so forth. And I thought when they first started out, the French fries were very good. And then the nutritionists got at them which turned out to be erroneous, that beef tallow fat was bad and that lard was bad and so forth. And so they changed it to some kind of a nutritionist oil, and they've been kind of limp ever since. I never really eat them, which is too bad. And I always am very strong about criticizing it, hoping maybe they'll change.
There was a little more to it, but that's one I can find. But she basically was like, why are we not using the tallow and the beef lard and all this? And she's, butter, obviously. And she said the nutritionists got a hold of it, and they made nutrition oils.
That's right. All the
Really
seed
fascinating. And she lived into her 90s or something like that.
oils. Oh yeah.
High fat diet.
People, I put butter in my coffee regularly,
Yep.
and every now and then, Dr. Liz and I will be on the road. We'll eat breakfast at that venerable spot called Starbucks, but we'll get the breads like pumpkin bread or a banana nut loaf or something, and we get 4 butters for each bread. And it's so much fun to see the look on the barista's face. 8?
That much butter.
If you've got more, and I'll never forget, back to Sally Fallon, years ago back in Chicago, she gave a talk, and it was a very funny talk. She's got a great sense of humor, and she was talking about putting half a stick of butter in her oatmeal.
Her oatmeal.
Yeah, the response in the audience was just
Half a
collective.
stick.
They were just the hypoxia was just like sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And she said, "Oh, should I add more?"
Half a stick of butter in a bowl of oatmeal.
Yeah,
That's hardcore.
that is hardcore. When I schooled her up though, in Las Vegas, and I think it stuck. I said, copper and retinol are 2 birds of a feather. They've got to be together. She didn't know that, and she said, "Well, it must be in the copper must be in the butter." And so I sent her the article from 2017 in France. I said, maybe not.
That's why I'm shocked the fact that you gave her the insight on that. And it's I don't want to like beat anybody up because I love their organization, but man, when somebody has data and somebody has information, you got to put that word out.
Yeah, and so it'll be interesting to see what she does with it. I think she was planning to call in someone like Leslie Clave, who just celebrated his 90th birthday a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
But he's still very vital, still active. I mean, I met Fred Kummerow when he was 98, and he was still
98.
98. I had a lunch at his home. He was still working 20 hours a week. We had grass-fed hamburgers and homegrown tomatoes He loved chocolate milk, had chocolate milk, and a salad. You know, he made the whole thing. And I mean, I'm sitting there with a living legend. The guy is amazing, 98 years old. So I called up Dr. Clave on his birthday and said, I'm going to meet you this coming year. He goes, all right, you know. So I'm going to find a way to either get out to North Dakota or to Minnesota where he spends his summers. But I think there's a very good chance he may be giving a talk in Orlando. That would be a hoot if he ends up doing that. That'd be a lot
So
of fun.
those legends of the copper game,
Yeah.
are they do they feel like you can still get it from food sources, or are they also seeing the supplementation necessities?
I never asked Kumaro that. I did ask Clave several years ago, and he regularly uses copper gluconate. I'm not sure it's a formula I've ever had success with, but that was his go-to.
Okay, so he was
Gluconate,
supplementing.
yeah, he was supplementing. Gluconate is it's a form of glucose, is what it is. It's funny. I never felt I got a straight answer from Jamie Collins on that. I He knows so much. He's
I know a
so
lot. I know a lot of the academics, like I'm not saying they do, but I've been around a lot of academics who just don't believe in supplementation. Like they
right.
just they don't understand the food thing. They're totally on just eat foods.
Right. That's exactly right. And I broached the issue of ascorbic acid versus whole food vitamin C, and he said, "I don't know that I know there's a difference." That's why I respect that. It's just
Yeah, they're just in a different
know,
world. At least they're going down the right path, and that's their journey.
totally, totally. And I think people would be genuinely surprised with what they do know and what they don't know. And but yeah, I should ask. There are a couple other copper gurus that I know. I should ask them what they're doing about copper, particularly in a post-glyphosate world, and see what
Well,
they know.
and one of the reasons I bring that up is because I've met a lot of academics, and the academics really that I've seen, and obviously I don't see them all, but the snapshot or minority that I've seen have always, a lot of them didn't even actually do stuff in their own field. Like they talked about something, but then they didn't live that kind of a lifestyle, or they didn't believe in a supplementation aspect. But I'd be interesting if any of them are aware of, know about, or researched the connection of copper or minerals to the soil problem, to regenerative farming, to the problem and solution of why are they doing their work that they're doing? Like, why is this a problem? Because you got to know where the problem comes from. I mean, you can talk about copper and magnesium and minerals and trace minerals all day long, but like, why is this a problem? Well, it's a problem because back to the source. Why is it not in the soil?
Well, a really big name in that field that you're talking about is Don Huber.
Yep. I talked to Sinef a couple weeks ago, and she wants to get Huber set up because I've talked about him a little bit.
Okay, he'd be an important person for you to check in with. But he's aware of the problem.
Okay.
Very intimately aware of the problem. He's met with a friend of mine, Martha Carlin, who she has a probiotic that helps to break down glyphosate in the gut. It's a really cool product called Sugar Shift.
Yep.
So this is a very elite group of people who know what the problem is. I think the question is, how do we solve it? And I think what people are beginning to realize is how big the problem really is.
So, a friend of mine who he doesn't own, but he works with an agriculture company, Regenerative Farming. Gabe Brown is in charge of that. So,
Okay.
I think I can say this out loud. Gabe Brown,
Yep.
and that company
Dirt to soil. Great.
have
Great
had conversations, and many have signed contracts with their organization, with people like Kellogg, General Mills, Whole Foods, etc. So they were presented, like General Mills, and I'm saying words out loud that I'm not. We talked about it at one time. I don't know if these are perfectly accurate. I just know these words were thrown around. Whole Foods, General Mills, etc. were briefed on this, and many of them signed up to work with Gabe's company to start changing. That was a couple years ago.
That's encouraging.
They do know, and one, I believe Gabe, I believe he went into a Monsanto meeting.
Yeah.
And he started the meeting with the scientists, and he started with the words, I'm paraphrasing, but similar words of cut the shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what you're doing. You're not stupid. Like, it's poison. So there is hope in that world.
I remember there was an interview with the PR director for Monsanto. This goes back probably 10 years. And he was being confronted with what you're talking about. And he was very dispassionate, there was no emotion. I just wonder, was he from this planet? I mean, Jason, his demeanor was so detached that he was aware of the problem, but he didn't care about it. It was a very mysterious detachment that was.
There was no
so
emotional connection to it of we have to do something. This is terrible.
None
no empathy
whatsoever.
even.
No, not even a whisper. And so it's like, it's a really dark company, as you know. And I commend Gabe for having the chutzpah to start a meeting off like that. But it's like, it feels like we're on the Titanic. We haven't just hit the iceberg. The ship has, right? That's what it feels like. And that front part hasn't fallen off, and the back half hasn't gone up. But it's just like, wow, we're right on the edge, dude. It just feels so not hopeless, but wow, it's breathtaking. And yet we're still here.
We're playing chicken, right? We're playing chicken, and we're breaking in that moment where you can't turn anymore. And you're like, what are we doing?
I know. Let me bring up a statistic that I find fascinating. I just learned it this morning.
Yeah.
I find it mind-blowing. And it was I get a feed from Academy. And they send me an article every day. And I'm in the groove now. They're sending me some really cool articles. But this article today talked about the fact that the human body chelates iron 1,000 times more than it chelates all the other heavy metals. Think about that. That the body is gravitating to chelate iron orders of magnitude 1,000 times greater than the other metals. Does that surprise you? Because it surprised me, but in a way it reassured me that iron is the bad guy.
Well, if it's that high, then of course the body's going after it.
The body's going after it.
It's trying.
It's trying to, and you've got to have copper to do that. But the corollary is that calls to question the other heavy metals, which has got everyone blinded by mercury, lead, cadmium, blah, 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 aluminum, when in fact, orders of magnitude, 1,000 times more is a lot, I think. So
that means it essentially trumps, without using a better word, all the other metals, the toxicity levels.
Thank you for saying it that way.
Meaning we can handle the mercury and the lead. Get the freaking iron out.
That's exactly how I interpreted it. Now, that's been my supposition for years. All this preoccupation with mercury and, got to get the metals out. There's only one metal you got to get out. It's iron. It's iron. And once you do that, the body is different. Energy level changes, ability to respond to toxins change. So I'll send you the article. I think you'll find it fascinating. But that was the mind blowing statistic was orders of magnitude, 1,000 times greater.
It's a big
So
number.
I thought the listeners would get a kick out of that.
It's a big number. If anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. We're happy to answer them. I'm a little excited about this serum and this cream.
Yeah.
How much cream would I have to put on to match what I need?
Oh, wow. I don't know. I can find out. I know that the serum is more potent than the cream. It'll knock you on your keister if you're not careful. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Serum's really strong. I'll find out what the.
I wouldn't mind being knocked on my keister with some copper. Be good.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I'll check out.
I like liquid forms of stuff a lot of times, and then I put too much in my body.
I'm shocked. like 16 quad, right? Or 4 quad, excuse me, 16 shots.
And you know what I used to do? This was the best part. I would drink that throughout the day. Then I would fly to another city for work. I would get into the city at like 10 o'clock at night. I would go grab another one, drink it at 11 o'clock at night, and then go to bed at 11:30, 12.
Yeah, you've got a liver like my brother-in-law.
I get what?
No, you've got a liver like my brother-in-law. He can drink coffee at midnight and go right to sleep.
I don't do that anymore, but I used to.
Yeah, no,
I've calmed myself now. I've reined it back in a little bit.
If I have coffee ice cream, I'm like, oh, I pay for it.
How do you remove iron from the system? You recommend blood donations, correct?
Yeah, you gotta do blood donations, and you gotta do the RCP. You gotta really focus on the mechanisms to get bioavailable copper, get the iron back into circulation.
Yeah,
that's the key. Oh, here's a little factoid.
Okay.
One of my students, I think you know him, Alfonso Manzo.
Yeah. He's been on. He was on a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Did he talk about the 3 to 5 milligrams a day of iron?
I think he did.
Yeah. He and I were chatting this morning, and I don't think I'd ever heard him talk about that. I said, dude. And so he's going to be meeting with the alumni of the RCP tomorrow afternoon.
So he's 3 to 5 milligrams of copper a day?
No. We're accumulating 3 to 5 milligrams of iron.
Oh, iron. I'm sorry. Yes. That's a lot.
It's off the chart a lot. Yes. Doesn't that make you change your thought process potentially on how much copper we need in a day? Potentially, yes. But it also makes me really focused on how do we release the iron from our tissue. Yes. We look like our ancestors on the outside. Inside, I think we look very different. And I don't think our organs are the right color. I don't think they're pumping out the right kind of energy. I don't think they're communicating with each other the way they're supposed to. I would agree. So it's just orders of magnitude of change that are needed. But yeah, you're right. You probably need more copper than you realize. That makes sense. Here's an interesting one, ready? I donated blood 10 days ago to get the iron out of the body. Interesting experience in that I tolerated the actual donation better than my other 31 times, but my blood pressure crashed at home 3 hours later. Wow. Interesting. That's fat. Crashed? Yeah. She's been overcoming, I think she reversed her own diabetes, or is very close to it. It's almost complete. She's done a lot of stuff with parasites. So that's an interesting one. Yeah. I've never heard of that. Neither have I had one client who went blind for 10 minutes. Really? After a blood donation, which is not typical, but it does happen. And the staff wasn't at all troubled by it. They knew exactly what to do. I mean, you can imagine the state of panic. So potentially an anomaly. Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
still weirded out by blood, man. I'm weirded out since COVID about going in and getting blood done.
To have a phlebotomist come to your home.
I might have to
That's-
because
The benefit of COVID was it created a whole network of phlebotomists who will come into the
no,
home.
it definitely did because I might have to. There's something, you know what I mean by that? Like I'm weird about going in. I didn't see where it came from. I don't know what's on the needle. Like I got weirded out.
No, I'd be slow to get a transfusion, but I'm
Oh,
not
without a
worried
doubt.
about. I'm not at all worried about going to Red Cross to do a blood donation. They're very thorough and meticulous about
Are
what
they?
they
Okay.
do. Yeah.
Good. When was your last one?
6 weeks ago.
Ooh, look at you.
Coming up, May 7th is the next one.
How often are you doing it?
We've been doing them every other month of late.
Damn.
Yeah, we're on an aggressive schedule.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And it feels right. It feels good.
Good. As always, genius stuff, sir. More and more people are finding the show.
That's great. That's what we want to hear.
More and more people are finding the show. Any parting words, sir?
No, just again, get more copper in your body.
Get
Really,
more
really.
copper. I'm going to buy the serum right now because I think that'll be a more successful, like
I think
making sure I take it.
I think you would enjoy that. I'll find out what the equivalent is.
Nice, nice. Well, everybody, this is Morley Robbins. It is Monday. He was back. May and June will be a little crazy for me. I have to travel a little bit more. That's okay.
We'll make it work.
We'll make it work, and we'll go from there. But watch away, share away, get it out to all your friends and family, and not your doctors. They don't care. They don't care. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. This is Mondays with Morley. This is Morley. I'm Dr. Jason Dean. Everybody have an amazing rest of your Monday. Take care, everybody.